So we have Dagnija Balode, Chief Business Officer of H2E Interior and Design Studio, and Björnson, Head of Development at Træna Island in Norway. Please join us up here in the spotlight. If you care to join us over here, we'll move over here. The format will be that, obviously we've had Marius's presentation already. Ladies will give a brief overview of their own interest in business and anything they want to say. Then we'll all convene back here and have a little bit of a discussion on some of the matters arising. So, any particular desire to go first? Dagnija? Yes. It's nice to see a Latvian taking the initiative there. So, Dagnija is going to tell us now about H2E Interior and Design Studio. Incidentally, you may have noticed, if you came on the, from the airport, you may have noticed part of their work on the way. There's a rather eye-catching sculpture at one of the main intersections, which I don't know if it'll appear or not.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me to share my experience and to tell my stories. I'm not here to give you the right answer or to give you the right, how to say, formula, what to do and how to do, but I'm here to inspire you to think and to look for your special stories to tell. We all are different, we all are coming from different locations, we all are using different languages, we all have a different history and traditions. And it is not good to compare ourselves to each other. It is the best way to show our unique stories, to show our unique values, to respect our traditions, to talk about our language, and also about history and our origin. We can highlight our authentic stories, we can talk about our personalities, and we can also show our events. How we can do that? By creating unique stories or creating unique experience. We should be proud of our location and authentic things. And this is one of the projects which was done some years ago. It is in a very special place in Latvia, in a small village far from Riga. And it is also special because of the personality who was living in Dagnija, in the place there. It was one of our famous Latvian poet, Rainis, and he was living in Dagnija, in this building, first of his 3 years. And as the place is special, there is living less than 20 people, and also the building is very special. We were looking how to express or how to tell this story, and it is always very strong to use authentic things, and the only authentic thing was the building where Rainis was living, but also what was around. These were the same trees and the same sun shining like in Rainis times. And the exhibition is about playing games. What are doing a 3-year-old boy? He's playing games, and also visitors here can use a wooden ball, can see the shadows, can see the sun, hear the sounds coming from outside, and playing the games, and like feeling like Rainis was felt in this in his childhood. We should also be proud of our history and not to be afraid of being emotional. We have similarities and differences in our history. For example, this is an exhibition in Latvian War Museum, which is about the First World War. And this was common for all of us, for our families, grandparents. But we are telling this story about war differently. This means for our nations something different. We have different emotions. And I inspire you to tell the history and not to be afraid of emotions. This is one of the emotional part in the exhibition, which is in 2 parts. From one part there is glory part of the war with the medals. On the other hand, or other wall is the losses of the war with the crosses and the dead of people. We can tell the stories differently from different perspectives. In Riga Motor Museum, in exhibition about the cars, we are not showing only the cars and talking about the technical things. We are showing the cars in the center and telling the stories about the personalities who use these cars, and also showing these cars in different time periods and explaining why these cars are like they are. We can also show identity of our places. These are two places, two cities in Latvia. And in one case, Alūksne city, it is a city with the lakes. And the city was not afraid to use the historical dialect in the city identity. And the creative idea of identity of the place was to show how the existing Alūksnes name is reflecting in the water of lake, but using the historical dialect. Another is city Liepāja, which is very famous in our country with the stories about wind. It is a city with the wind. And we were like looking what is special, and if there is stories in the nation and in any Latvian's head about this windy city, then we used identity with the wind, and you can see that in the city name there is wind blowing and having this wind feeling. We should not be afraid, and we should be proud to talk about personalities that we have, and to be proud of these personalities who did something special for our nation. Exhibition about Rainis and Aspazija. They both were living in Riga. This is their flat. We are also showing authenticity of this flat. We are showing the things that Rainis and Aspazija were using, not being fake, to show something that is unreal, but to show real things. And to give the feelings for visitor, we are putting shadows in the flat, that any visitor can have feeling that Rainis and Aspazija is still using this flat, and they can be with these two poets. I will show a very small film, which is also very special. It is special about a small train, which is historical one in Latvia, and it is still going through two cities, Gulbene and Alūksne. And the exhibition is about not only the train, but mostly traditions and the people who were living there, who were using this train, and who are proud of the thing that they have. Sorry.
Vietura Alūksne. Vietura Stāmeriene.
And we also should be brave to take a risk, to tell our stories, to show our locations, and to use sometimes very interesting or special design, like in this case, it's a fisherman place. And I wish you to be brave, to catch your ideas, and to show what is unique in your countries, in your history, what is unique about your language, your traditions and personalities. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please come and join us back here. I'm really glad that you mentioned Aluksne, because it gives me an opportunity to plug myself. In my other hat is I do write novels as well, and my most recent one, which was published in July, called 11th Baltic, the most important section happens in Aluksne, and as part of the process of writing it, I did quite a lot of research there and spent a lot of time there, and it's an absolutely fascinating place. Formerly known as Marienburg for our German friends who are here. There were some interesting parallels with some of the things Marius was talking about earlier on as well. But I'll now call on Moa to give her presentation, because I'm also glad that Dagnija gave me an excuse to say I am a novelist and therefore an artist, because I think Moa is going to tell us something about a very, very beautiful place where artists are sometimes allowed to stay. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. So good to be here, and thank you for excellent presentations. I could just be in that chair and just continued listening for the rest of the day. But we're going north now. So we're going home to my island, and I want you all to imagine that you are sitting in a boat and you have the wild Norwegian sea, and you're sitting there with the waves for 5.5 hours. Like, just take 5.5 seconds and imagine. Then you are close to where I live. So I've been traveling from this island to here, and it's called Træna. I just want to ask, does anyone heard about Træna before? One. That's fantastic. That's more than on all other conferences I've been to, so 100% raise on that. I actually moved from the city of Malmö 4 years ago up to this island, so I've downshifting, or took another step in the career. I was working with urban innovation processes, and then I was hired to be a head of development for the third smallest municipality far out in the Norwegian Sea, several hours from mainland. So for me, it was a great step. No one else understood what the hell I was doing. But in making this shift, I started reflecting upon how we are living. And I want to raise one of the questions that is on top of my agenda, and I can imagine that you in Latvia also considering these questions when we are live in an urban world. There is a question about the role of the countryside, or the unurban part of the country. Will the countryside be nothing more than just rural examples of a history that we have left, and be a nostalgic part for tourists to go visit every now and then? Or could actually small places far out in the districts be in the lead for innovative thinking and doing? Or are we just all losers living outside of the big urban areas? Well, I don't know if you noticed the little subtitle here, that we, Træna, I'm actually a little bit proud of this. As the third smallest municipality, we actually won the Norwegian Innovation Award. So we are the third smallest, but the most innovative. I'm not here for bragging. I'm just going to tell a little bit about how we have been doing and how we have been thinking. Træna is a place where we say yes to ideas, where we consider ourselves, no matter where we are from, as locals, and where we tend to turn the perspectives around so that we can get benefits from, instead of negative thinking, stay positive. I say these three things in first, so that I don't miss up on those when finishing off this. These are my most important 3 points. But starting, you are all wondering, where is this little island? And it's on this mapped out here. It's actually right at the Arctic Circle, and it's quite far from the central areas in Europe. When I lived in Malmö, we all looked at Europe, at Brussels, where the decisions were made, and we considered that as central. But if you switch the globe and you scroll around a little bit, you can see that no place is more central than any other, actually. And if you consider where the resources are and where the biggest issues around the world, we had a fantastic presentation about the plastic problem. And yes, we live from and with the sea. Here, out in the blue center, our global resources are fish, oil, gas. Climate changes are seen more dramatically here. So I actually say to those who think that I moved far away that no, I moved more central. When I came to Træna, I got this book. This was on my first visit. This is the official guidebook to Træna with a very long title, A Poor Man's Commercial Coastal Guide to a Magical World Far Up North, Out to the Left, and How the Hell to Get There, all based on a true story. And the title is so long, and I think it explains a little bit that also the travel there is long. And that could be a challenge, but it could also be seen as a possibility. So being central is more a matter of references and a state of mind than seeing yourself as a peripheral, tiny part of the world that doesn't do any important stuff. So we are actually in the inner circle, we say. But as I said, it can be a challenge, and it's all about communication. Either it's physical communication as transport. You have to actually be a little bit clever to get up to Træna, because you have to deal with not only one of these difficult time schedules, but 5 to get all the way there. So it's an intelligence test, and that means that only those who either get the test are there, so we only have intelligent people, or those who actually were born there and didn't have to, they knew the time schedule by heart. But after some frustration for me, living there just a couple of months and having a lot of visitors from South or around Europe, I just created this one to explain that, yes, we are actually out west and we have some central points where you can more easily understand how to travel here. And this became so popular, so the county that are responsible for the transportation, they said, yes, maybe we could print those. Maybe we should use those kind of explanations for the transport system. Yes, it wasn't my idea. I mean, we have seen those kind of maps before in bigger cities. So we are now reference groups for the county's transportation department, trying to be more clever in communication. Not building the boats, but trying to describe how to use them. 2 facts about Træna. You know that it's far away. Yes, you know that it's out in the sea and that it's tiny. It's 457 inhabitants. Imagine that, more or less the amount of people that's attending to this conference. So that's handy, isn't it? But it's also known in Norway, not just because it's far away and out on the uttermost west coast. It's also one of the oldest fishing communities in Norway. We have findings there from the Stone Age showing that people lived there in caves 9,000 years ago. And we are at the same time having one of the most coolest festivals in Norway. So we have 2 main target groups. There are fishermen and hipsters. And these actually nowadays looks very much the same. Men with a beard. And we have one religion, and that's the sea. We live from the sea, and we hailed the cod. But time is changing and has changed always. It's not just now times are changing. We always tend to think that we are living in this very dramatic time changing, but I think people have always done that. And this is the cave where we have the Stone Age findings. So here people lived 9,000 years ago. And it has therefore been a very important place to visit, both for local people and from people all around Norway. Going to that cave, seeing how it was. This is from visitors in the 1940s. And you can imagine what these people thought about the future, what the time they were living in, Second World War. What were their perceptions of the future for the sea, for the community, for Norway, for this cave? Could they imagine that it looked like this some years later? And this is because one guy had one idea. In that very specific old cave, I want to hold a concert with international musicians and inviting people to our oldest cultural heritage. And probably a lot of people said, no, you're crazy, it's not possible. But you remember my first point of the three subjects? Say yes. And it's enough that one people say, yes, why not? Instead of, no, why? And this became one of the most important sectors in Træna, cultural businesses and festival and events. So now 5,000 people come to Træna every year, and we grow from 500 to 5,000. So we learn how it is to see the dramatic change in a small society. But we also get new influences from that. And the festival is fine, but what about the other 360 days? The festival has learned us that there is potential. It looks like this. People are fighting for the last spots on the island to get a place to stay. But during the winter time, we suddenly have empty houses and see a slightly depopulation, at least when I came there. These houses were empty when I moved there, and I asked why. The new architecture, they are fantastic. I could choose which house I wanted. And they said, no, people here know that they are built. Yes, but you didn't do any ad for it. I didn't even know when I was Googling Træna that you had so fantastic houses. Yeah, but everyone here knows. And I was thinking, yes, but maybe they don't see the audience outside the island. So we did a test. I said, if you give me some of these houses and we make a project, try Træna or test Træna. We called it an artist in residence, but it's not only for artists, it's for every creative people. Apply to become a test islander for a period of time and try the island life at the Arctic Circle. This first test was just for people to see if they would like it, and also for us to see is there any interest in this island except for during the festival. We got so many applications. And we got, of course, media coverage. This was before the age of fake news, so this is completely real. Berlin, it's out, now it's Træna. And this made us actually expand the program, saying artists, business, chefs, and then we add like whatever you want in residence. As long as you have an idea, you have a project, you have something you want to work with, a research subject, a science, journalism, novelists, or whatever it can be. And so far we have got 300 applicants. It's actually the last day of submissions tomorrow, so you can think of this after the conference. Yes, and for those who are bureaucrats, I usually say, because they ask, how can I get the possibility to get to Træna? And I said, it's fine, you can apply to the bureaucrats in residence. So people are welcome. That's the main idea. And I just wanted to show you just short what can happen from inviting the world into the little island. We got new startups, one who had an idea of starting working with seaweed, seeing not it's just as a thing that smells bad, but that you actually can turn into a gourmet product. And this was strange when she started in 2015 on the island. And now we see that they are serving seaweed on the fanciest restaurants in Oslo. We invited architects, or architects find out that they wanted to come and restore one of the oldest boathouse into a sauna. And people local said that, well, we don't have a sauna culture here. We don't swim. Moa, it's cold in the ocean. We use it for fishing. Yeah, well, now we have a sauna culture. And 20% of the local community is member of the club. And from small things to big things, Osram, as an international company, wanted to test out the urban lighting programs. And they asked Oslo if they could test out the products there and the processes. And they did. It was hard to get through the bureaucracy in Oslo. They were just sent around in different departments. And then they contacted us. They could be a business in residence. So we said yes in 2 days, and they came and made this fantastic project, turning the dark season into something exciting. And we also get new perspectives from people coming from outside, not seeing the weather as bad or shitty, but actually, wow, there is a huge roughness in this. This is exotic. I can sell this. And we started to make a festival also during the winter time, saying, yes, Træna, ta Træna med storm, Træna taken by storm. We are hailing the bad weather and inviting only the toughest people to come during winter time. So these are my main things I want to say to you. Say yes a little bit more often than you say no. See everyone as locals. Even if they are only residents for a short period of time, don't call them tourists. Say short-term locals, long-term locals, part-time locals, or super locals. But if we see everyone as locals, we also use them as resources in building a local community. And turn the perspectives. If the wind is in your face, turn around and do something with the wind you have. And the last thing I want to say is also be proud, as you mentioned. And as I mentioned, we are a tiny little municipality, but we can be innovative. And only those communities where people are open to ideas, welcoming, and not afraid of questioning the norms, they are innovative. So there is a big potential for you, even if you are small or big or super urban or micro-urban. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moa. That was amazing. I mean, I want to go there already. I think that's maybe the cleverest piece of marketing I've ever heard is you can come here, but only if you're tough and you're intelligent. I mean, it makes you want to go immediately, doesn't it, just to prove the point. There's so much there from all three of you that we can get into, but I think what we'll do is we'll take a few questions on the magic screen here at the beginning. While we're talking, maybe you can send in some more questions and we'll do another few questions at the end, and in between we'll have the discussion. So if the questions from the public are available, can we display them, please? Is Martin around? Here we go. Wow, this anonymous guy or woman seems to be quite active on here. Thank you for the very inspirational presentation of the plastic whale. Yeah, what are the possibilities to get involved in the organization? We also have Plastic Whale for President, which is quite a nice slogan. And what exactly happens to the plastic after it's done? I think maybe you could also answer the question we had earlier about the funding model that you use. Yeah. So over to you, Marius.
Well, first, there were a couple of questions. The first one was about funding. Was it private?
Yeah.
You know, all funding has been private. So in the first couple of years, when I didn't have a job, I was investing myself. And then I got private investors, and I still do. So it's not publicly funded at all. But we also we make our own turnover, and we have profit every single year. So we're doing really well. But all the profit we reinvest in growing our organization.
But it sounded from your presentation that you're kind of on the cusp of a very big expansion into all these other cities and so on. I mean, is that also going to come from private funding, or is there the tendency to go to venture capital and stuff like that?
No, that's looking at also private funding, but then or from organizations. So we're talking to various multinationals who have asked us literally how they could help us fund our international expansion. So that's what we're looking into now. How does the ban on single-use plastics affect our business model? Well, it doesn't so far, because obviously it still needs to go into effect. And then again, I started Plastic World to solve a problem, not to be doing the same thing for the next 30 years. So we want to go out of business. You know, that's why we exist. However, the problem is so huge and so complex that it won't happen just within a few years. But I hope it's going to affect our business. I hope. And then again, if a problem is solved in Amsterdam, we have to go to other parts of the world where we can fish plastic and create economic value from it. So that's pretty much our model. Can the plastics be recycled infinitely? No, it can be recycled infinitely. That's true for everything, actually. So, but there are new techniques being developed. There's one company in Holland that has made some sort of a magnetic process that can recycle PET indefinitely. So,
but presumably what you're doing at the moment is there's such oversupply of the raw material that you're actually taking that raw material which is available, so it's still a sort of a net saving for the world, isn't it?
Yeah, but for instance, well, if we make PET felt from the PET bottles that we fish out of the canals, and that can be turned into raw material again. So, but not infinitely now at the moment.
It's something I wanted to ask you about. The success that you've had, and it's such an appealing idea, have you had any problem with copycats? Because it seems to me that someone might look at your success and think, well, all we need is a boat and some posters and we can do the same thing, but without the accreditation, without the same care and attention to detail.
Yeah, well, I celebrate people copying it because, again, you know, there's a global problem, and we don't pretend to solve everything ourselves. We don't want to solve everything ourselves. Some people have been a bit ungrateful in that sense, or claiming something that wasn't their idea, and that's, you know, but I let it go quickly. You know, that's the fact of life. But in general, we are the ones who actually do this as a business, and who are growing so fast. I mean, we're in the company already with 13 people, 50 skippers we have, a large community helping us. So in that sense, we're still quite unique, because, you know, it's a lot of pain starting this. You know, it's not easy doing it.
Well, that was very striking when you were talking at the beginning and saying, you know, there's a very real situation in which you don't know where the money's going to come from to feed your family, exactly. And yet it's still you made that decision to go for it, which in a way could be characterized as like a selfish decision, except what was it that made you take that decision? Was it just that you knew this was exactly what you wanted to do and there was no alternative? Or?
Well, in the beginning, it is some sort of a selfish decision, of course, having a family, because you take a lot of risk. But it's also something I was searching for, the way that I wanted to lead my life, and looking for going to the edge. Because I believe that we lead our lives very much led by fear of mistakes, fear of failure, things like that. Whilst I don't want to believe in failure, because even if something doesn't go the way you want it, taking the steps will always take you somewhere. to new insights, to new people. But maybe you have less money. But then again, you know, being stuck to money keeps us always in a very safe place. And that safe place doesn't create change. And if you want to create change, you always have to take risk. That's the main thing.
Something else which really struck me about your presentation, which I think acts as a nice bridge to Dagnija's presentation, was those original posters that you produced. They were very clearly sort of retro styled. They looked like they were sort of from the 30s, 40s. Yeah. That very well-known Dutch design from that period as well. And they were like hugely appealing. How important do you think that was as a presentation tool? Because it seems to tap into something rather than just eco-friendliness or wanting to have a good day out. It touches into something kind of deeper.
Yeah, that makes all the difference. You know, about 10 years ago, if you would say that you wanted to create a business out of sustainability, people would look at you like they won't believe you because everything good was being subsidized. Whilst I wanted to show that being an entrepreneur can actually be for the good of the world or for people. But you have to do it in a qualitative way. Mostly initiatives like these are, yeah, with all due respect, a bit, well, not so professional. And being from Amsterdam is also an advantage because there's a huge creative community there with people who can create beautiful stuff, and that's the people I met. But also looking at Træna, you know, looking at the creative part of it, the openness, but also the professionalism and the entrepreneurialism behind it, that makes it different from all the other things. And that's what appeals. People look nowadays, they appreciate you being entrepreneurial about sustainability instead of the other way around.
Thank you. And if I might use that as a bridge to Dagnija as well, in a sense, when you're dealing with, well, subject matter, Rainis and Aspasia, who are kind of legendary Latvian writers and poets, was there a certain fear, because you emphasized in your talk that you shouldn't be afraid of kind of thinking originally and maybe not following the orthodox route. How do you work your way through that? Because so many people must have preconceived ideas about, Rainis we treat like this, Aspasia we treat like this, and anything that smacks of the modern rather than of the era in which they were writing might be viewed as slightly heretical.
In our office or design studio, the risk is in everyday's life. You can't come and just say, I feel like this. You never know if you will create something, how others will understand this, what others will say about design or about the way how you're telling the stories. We are always analyzing a lot, we are always reading a lot, and this is the best part of design studio, that we are not just creating or designing, we are going deep in any of stories. For example, we were reading Rainis and Aspasia for more than a year, all office. Because we need to go deep and to understand these personalities, for example. And then we are visualizing how we understand them. And, but risk is, yeah, it's in everyday's life. But I like the quote that Mark Zuckerberg said that the biggest risk is not taking any risk.
The other important point that I'm sure a lot of people in the audience probably feel strongly as well is this idea that there's more to the countryside than it just being a sort of pseudo theme park for people from the city, that there's real life there and that this is a potential economic stream, a cultural stream that needs to be tapped into. How do you kind of express that in design terms? Is it just a matter of applying the same high urban standards and saying that, the way that you always designed your signposts in your municipality or your weekly news sheet has to be up there with the best rather than just the way that it's been printed for the last 30 years?
It's, we always should do our best, even it's a small or big place or small or big project, small or big personality. it's always about the quality and always about the story, what you want to say. It's nothing about the size of the place, or nothing about the size of the space, or yeah, it's just that you want to tell these stories. And
I mean, do you ever face any opposition in that people outside of Riga, in the further cities or in the countryside, sort of saying, well, look, here come the big wigs from the big town telling us what to do. They think we don't know what we're doing. And how do you, I mean, is it just a matter of time to kind of make contact in a deeper level?
Actually, I allow the thing that we see that from, I don't know, some last years. It is very not popular, but we can see that many of countryside places are growing up. They want to share their experience, they want to tell their stories, they want people coming, visiting them, and it is a very, very special thing because, yes, we can build everything here in the capital city in Riga, but it's the best way to show what is all around, because there are so different things and so unique things. Even it can be the same, for example, the poet here in Riga, but these poets, Rainis and Aspazija, have different stories or lifetimes here in Riga and the different ones in Tadinava, and we are like telling or showing what's happened in the countryside or in this in the small building, giving the feelings what are in the countryside, and also showing what is happening here in the Riga.
This actually ties in with the question we've just had come in on Slido as well. How do you make local heroes interesting for foreign guests? Because, for instance, you know, Rainis and Aspazija are well known in Latvia, but outside of Latvia, very few people have heard of them. So do you make an effort to address foreign visitors, or is it just for domestic consumption?
First of all, we should be proud ourselves. And if we are proud and we are like, visitors are coming also from abroad, they can feel this proudness, and that's the first thing.
So they sense that prideness, and that generates interest that they want to find out more, and materials there for them.
And also showing why they are special for us, why these personalities are special, or why our local places are special, why our language is special, how we are telling the stories about the history, why the history is special for us. Because how I mentioned, when we designed the First World War exhibition here in Latvia, we went to War Museum also in London, also in Germany, and we saw that the First World War, we had this, had this event, but we are telling this war from different perspectives. From our nation, from Latvians, this war means something different, and we had different emotions. For people in Germany and in other world, it means something more different.
Well, thank you. And in a way, I mean, that kind of preceded a similar message from you, Moa, in that you were talking about how it's not just nostalgia and exotic examples of rural history, I think you mentioned as well. So, and your presentation was the exact opposite of that. But was it the temptation to present Træna as unspoiled and will always be unspoiled? It's a rock, and that's kind of its selling point, not the fact that there's a festival there or that all these innovative architecture is happening there, that the selling point is it's a rock and it's a long way away and only a very few people can go there.
I would say that the contrasts are the attraction. And I think that we are interested in not just being a rock out in the wild Norwegian Sea, because there are a lot of rocks in Norway with extremely calm places where nothing is happening. But I think that the contrast is the answer. We can be very traditional, celebrating our old heritage, and still be modern and thinking about the future in the same time. And it's not either or, it's both. And it's not maybe both all the time, but it's very calm and still many days of the year, but then it's a contrast when there is an event happening.
I mean, I was quite impressed earlier on when Mr. Eglitis said that more than double the population of Latvia had gone through Riga airport, and then you popped up and said that 10 times the population comes to visit Træna every year. I mean, but there's a very obvious question there, which is, does that not itself change the character of the place, and how do the locals react to that? Was there any opposition to even promoting it as a tourist destination?
Yeah, I love the question, because what I hear now in the tourism sector or in the local societal changes is that we are talking about over-tourism and too many people pollution. And in Træna, we are actually in that very nice balance that people locally love the festival and they celebrate it as it's Christmas and bringing home all their family. And inviting strangers just because they need a shower and having a coffee with someone they never spoken to. So we are still in this very early days of seeing tourism as just curious visitors coming. And I think that has to do with history, actually. Norwegian coastal climate has been based on ships coming with either new goods, new people, or with good ideas, or with ideas of cooperation, or with war, or fightings. So I think it's based in the culture that you are both skeptical and curious on those who are coming. And I see that in the tourism or in the visiting sector nowadays as well. People are curious. It would be too many if we were 5,000 all year round. But now it's a nice balance.
This leads to what I think is a fascinating sort of variation on the normal tourism model, because from what you're saying, and actually from what you were saying about there being no real tourists, but there being short-term residents, sort of medium-term residents and long-term residents, really people are going there with the intention of, to an extent, integrating into the social structure, being part of the society, whether it's for a short period or a long period, not just showing up, taking photos and going again as a sort of external force. I mean, that seems to be quite a fresh, well, in a sense, it's a very old-fashioned way of looking at tourism, in that when it was very difficult to travel, people kind of had to do that more often. But in our convenient world, people tend to go, visit somewhere and leave. So you're really talking about a form of social integration.
Yes, and seeing that everyone in this world are mobile people. We are not stuck to one place all of our lives. And I think that what we can see, we can put up this in a scale, saying that yes, we have one-night standers that are only there for a night, taking pictures, posting on Instagram, or those cruise tourists that are coming, hundreds of them, standing outside the local cafe to get Wi-Fi, to post their Instagram pictures, and then leaving 2 hours later. That's a way of tourism that we see develops in the world. But at the same time, we see adventure tourism and just people spending more and more time as free time and as flexible work. So we want to get more qualitative tourists or visitors or part-time locals. And I think if you are going to Træna, as you said, you are both intelligent and creative, perhaps. And then you are interested in also putting some time there. You don't go 5.5 hours in boat and then just take a picture and leave. I don't know, would you do that? Or you could stay at least a couple of days and then you get interacted and then you come back. We see a lot of people coming back.
We have another question here on the Slido. You've kind of answered the first part, but the second part I think is a very valid question from tourism professionals that we have here. Do you have a long-term sustainability model, or is this just a kind of wing it as you go along thing?
Yes and no. I would say that we don't know which changes that will come. But we are working now in a national research project that the Norwegian Research Council set up with tourism and local local hoods developing. So we are, the main question, it's a huge project, but the main question is like, how much tourism does a local community need and how much can we take? And finding that balance is a good thing that I think some local communities they should pose that question 3 years ago. And when you tip over, it might be too late.
I'll take another question here from the Slido. We'll do some more at the end because I've got something I really want to ask all three of you. But Marius, what's the price of furniture made from PET bottles? It might be a sale, you never know, so that's why I'm asking.
No, anything but. It's all, it's now limited edition. So we first produced 20 table sets, so one table has 8 chairs. And it's about 20,000 euros. So, but some companies say, well, that's a lot of money, but it's actually, you must see it more as some sort of a sponsorship of what we do. You can sponsor a boat, like I said, or you can buy a table. You get a presentation from me, a boat tour, things like that, so there's a whole package to it. And also, you're part of the launching partners. So that's it's still expensive. The lamps are less expensive, of course, and we've got beautiful acoustic panels. But currently, we are further developing our portfolio. So standing lamps, small lamps, things like that. Smaller lighter chairs, smaller tables, to be able to spread the products more.
It was interesting as well what you said. In a sense, there's a hidden value as well. When you mentioned that the government ministry which had taken the table, it's a talking point. So, exactly. You know, in a normal situation, you shouldn't be talking about the furniture when you're having a government meeting. But in this particular case, it acts as a sort of catalyst for, well, democratic process.
Exactly. It's very much a commitment, and from the CEO mostly got the table in his room or in the large meeting room, to the rest of the employees, but also anyone who's visiting the company, about their view upon developing in the field of sustainability and the circular economy, because that's a really hot item in the Netherlands. At least in the Netherlands. I don't know how it is over here, but for Dutch companies, about 5 years ago, sustainability would be somewhere around there, and now it's all up here. It's all part of the main strategy. But they're all struggling the way to do that. How to make it concrete, how to make it, how you can actually touch it. And this is a way of doing that, and that's a way of showing the company's commitment to arriving there. And at the same time, it's a great talking piece.
Also, the issue of partners, because getting into designing furniture, I mean, it's something that every design student at art school does. It's real high-end stuff, basically designing a chair. It's one of the actual benchmarks of interior design. How important was it for you to use an established designer or a pair of designers to do that? Did it give you a sort of entry into the market that you might not have got otherwise, do you think?
Yeah, well, we wanted to make design furniture, just also to prove a point that waste shouldn't be seen as waste, but as raw material for beautiful things. And very often recycled materials are used for things that are nice to see, but they're also gimmicks. So after maybe a month or a year, you're fed up with it. And there's also a part of sustainability in the sense of sustainability in the fact that you create something that you don't want to throw away, that you want to keep. We wanted to create furniture that people would love to keep instead of renewing it. You know, for the average Dutch company, the economic lifetime of furniture is 7 years. So every 7 years it's thrown out and bought new, whilst this should stay there for tens of years. something you want to inherit from your grandpa or something. That's how we looked at it. So the basis is good design.
Now I want to ask the question that I really have been wanting to ask all three of you for a while. All three of you use this word authentic in one way or another, authenticity. So I simply want to ask, maybe starting with you, Moa, what is authenticity and what is inauthentic? Are there some guiding principles? Are there some basic rules of thumb that we can use to sort the authentic from the inauthentic and from the, you know, cheap authentic?
How long time do we have? I hate that word. And still there are not so many different words to use. But I think everything could be authentic in one person's eyes and non-authentic in another one's. So, and that's what I don't have an answer to this, but I would say that when I come to Træna, I see, for example, Træna, and I see what's there is, of course, my baseline. Those who lived there from 1930s would use 1930s as a baseline. And then we don't think that we are always on the shifting. So everything's a change always, and we are just on a curve. And I would say that we create authenticity in just being and living what we stand for. I have no definition on that, but I think that you feel with your stomach when something is not authentic, or when it's just bad. It can be authentic and bad, but I mean, you can be a nationalist, authentically nationalist and patriot, and have very bad ideas. But authenticity is not just a word that we should hail. Yeah.
It seemed to me there was...
Move on, please.
Yeah, but before you do, I asked you because it seemed to me that maybe there was an answer in your presentation when you were talking about the Winter Bad Weather Festival, which really, really appealed to me, because in fact it's an acknowledgement that there is a less attractive side to things, and maybe authenticity is something to do with an acknowledgement of that rather than just promoting the good things. But anyway, that's just my view.
Thank you for answering the question.
But I love the sound of that festival.
And that's actually what we wanted, because so many people come during the summer and they love it. And we heard that many said, yeah, I wonder how it is here on a normal day. And that's what we are doing in the wintertime. It's not 5,000 coming then.
This is the premium festival, you say. This is the more exclusive one in the worst conditions.
Yeah, but it's we say that we celebrate everything that makes life hard at the Arctic Circle, yet very fascinating. And we both love it and hate it, you know, when the boats are cancelled or when it's a storm or a hurricane. We love to feel the engagement about the energy that's inside there, but we of course hate when the boat is cancelled.
This love of difficult and hard things. There are going to be so many Latvians showing up next year. It's going to be unbelievable.
Well, we'll see if they are intelligent enough.
Dagnija, then, maybe coming more specifically from a design perspective. I mean, designers are always taking things from the past and repurposing them for the future. But any tips on how we can tell the authentic from the inauthentic?
Actually, designers are like to be more simpler that they can be. For me, authenticity means also to be real, not to be fake. And I can also say that in Rainis museum in Dagnija, the museum didn't have any exhibit, which is from the time when Rainis was living there. And it is about not to be fake and not to make a fake exhibition and fake things to show, and not to tell the fake stories. And that's why we used the only thing which is authentical. It's the building where the Rainis was living, and just to put in the real feelings that Rainis could feel, looking on the sun or looking on the trees outside or playing with the shadows, and to feeling some sounds and smells there. And this is for me what means authentical. Yes, to be real.
So this is something about creating an atmosphere then, rather than only providing the information that, you know, Ryan is sat in this seat or these are his spectacles or whatever. It's something about an emotional connection.
Also.
Marius, the authentic and the inauthentic.
Well, I agree with
Can we
both.
sort that in the way that you sort your plastic bottles?
Yeah. Now, in my opinion, well, why I left the field of marketing, because there was so much, how do you say it correctly without using the word bullshit, but so much bullshit in marketing, and that's got to do with, I think, the lack of vulnerability. I think vulnerability is very important, because we have learned to make everything some sort of perfect and only show our strengths, our successes, and all those things. But I read one book once, and on the back of the book it said, what happened to the beauty of failure? Because without failure there's no creativity. But also without vulnerability there's no real side, you know, nothing. And that's what I like also about the story about Træna, is that it shows the vulnerability as well. But that's what makes life interesting. The success is not interesting at all. That's just the outside. But it's what's behind the whole success, and that's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And the blood, sweat, and tears make life interesting. And I think people need to show that more. Also companies. Nothing is all just successful. Just dare to fail, dare to be vulnerable. That's how I look at things.
I think that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, it implies as well that you treat people as full human beings with all their appetites or their failures or their flaws, as well as just being consumers or as being tourists. That, you know, we all have mood swings, we all have periods when we want to be alone, periods when we want to be with other people. And often this is not addressed in the tourist sphere, where people are seen as sort of product to push through the various channels. Right. Well, I just think that's fantastic anyway. We'll turn to a few final questions, because I think we're a few minutes from lunchtime, and they do a very good lunch here. Also, as a journalist, pen, pad, lunch. You know, that's the three great draws. The effect of collecting plastics from the Amsterdam channels, is it measurable? So do you have any sort of figures?
Well, what we measure, of course, is what we take out of the canals. We don't pretend to solve the problem ourselves, but everything we take out, it's out. That's what we say. The problem is so huge and complex, so it depends on so many factors that we can't influence, that I never want to claim that we solve the problem in Amsterdam. There's also the local authorities. They also fish plastic from the canals and all sorts of other rubbish, like many tens of thousands of bicycles, tens of cars every year. So
I always wondered where those bicycles that end up in Latvia came from, and now I know. A lot of them are Dutch.
But no, we fish out about 30,000 bottles every year, and about 2 to 3 times the volume of that of other sorts of material. And what we do to those other sorts of materials, that's also a question I saw. We give it to the garbage men now, because we can't do anything with it at the moment. We just use the bottles and the bottle caps.
And before we take a couple of final questions, if you've got any to send in, I mean, I'm sure this discussion has sparked off a few other facts or pieces of information or opinions you want to hear, which I haven't covered, so send them in now while I ask my other big question, which is very unfair to ask with 5 minutes to go, but use of social media. How have you used it? What are the mistakes to avoid as far as social media use is concerned? More.
Well, first of all, I would say that we use social media a lot to just communicate within the local community. It's fantastic to have one Facebook group where everyone in the local community is included. You can so easily reach out talking about participatory design and authorities having dialogues with their inhabitants. It's use social media in a way where you have a good dialogue. I know that it's hard sometimes because you always have these net trolls. But
even on Træna? Or they're coming from outside?
We don't see them. They live in the cave.
The real trolls.
No, but I would say as a small municipality, and I mean, we work from a zero budget always, so social media has been a huge tool for us to reach out. And I think that, I mean, it's not only reaching out because we want to get visitors coming, it's for putting an agenda on a national agenda, actually, making Træna a test zone for things, or saying that, hi, we are also here, we want to raise this question, please. And in that way, social media is very democratic. We can actually reach out to those who have the power and create those agendas. So I would say, not only for marketing, but for actually having the dialogues you want to have in the society.
I guess it also gives you a fairly easy way to show that, or immediate feedback to show that something you've done is working, or at least people are talking about it, because you can, search the search terms.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, but I also would say that we are not interested in just creating an image that everything is successful, because we don't gain from that. We want to, as you are saying, show the vulnerability. Thank you. And as we speak, show the failures and so on. But also to say that this is not a formula for making small communities live. This is only what we are trying and testing and planning while we are flying. And I think that is just as important, not to come to conferences and saying, yes, you can do like this. We are just testing this. This was just a test to see, yeah, can we work like this? And what is the next step? We maybe don't know. But having that dialogue on both local level and the national level, and of course, if possible, an international level as well.
Dagnija, is it something similar for you? Because I imagine that, if you come up with a design, you can put it out there, people can comment, feedback, and you get very quick idea of whether there's going to be opposition, whether people think this is the most beautiful thing they've seen. Is that how it works?
For us, it's a bit opposite, because yes, we can communicate what we did, what we are thinking about something, but we are lucky because we can have this face-to-face talk with the people, and that's the biggest part of our work and of our processes, because if museum specialists are coming to us, if the local people are coming to us, we should find out the stories and find out their values, traditions, what they need to talk about, and this is only possible through face-to-face.
And Marius, with your initial surprise at the number of people who showed up for that first event of yours, was it social media that did that, or was it maybe good old-fashioned word of mouth? Because that probably shouldn't be underestimated, particularly in a city like Amsterdam, where people are very connected on a personal level, not just electronically. Well,
it goes hand in hand. I owe everything to social media, starting up with Twitter and a blog and Facebook, posting my man on the moon, asking people to help me. But afterwards, it very much becomes a game between social media and word of mouth. Because if it's just social media, it's just out there, but it's about the real people. We've got about 13,500 followers on Facebook or something. But over the last year, we've been plastic fishing with more than 11,000 people. So we involve and engage more people actually in real life than on social media. And I think also that's the true story, the involvement of people is getting more and more important as well.
Okay, well, we'll finish with a couple of questions from social media. Very quick answers, because I'm hungry and I think everyone else here as well. How do you choose your sponsors, Marius? It says, I believe Primark, for example, could never be one,
Primark,
but we don't necessarily need to single them out.
How do you choose your sponsors? Yeah, it's very much based upon intent of the sponsor themselves. I don't believe that Primark, for example, could never be one, because that could be a very interesting one, because changing something at Primark with the huge effect they have on society and business. If you can just make a small change there, you can make a huge change in society. You know, some people think that you only should work with the top sustainable companies, but there are just a few. Well, Patagonia, for instance, is one of our friends, and I admire them a lot, but there are just so few of them. We're also working together with Coca-Cola, for instance, and also Frumona of Pepsi and supermarkets, because they are all looking for a way to do things differently. They all have new, young team of directors with young kids like I do, and they all know that things should change, but they are struggling to find a way to change those things within the structures they are working within.
But do you not worry that they might be using you as a bit of a fig leaf to cover up for not being particularly environmentally friendly?
Some of them might, yeah, of course. And that's also, again, that's the truth of life. But also it's very much on a personal basis as well, seeing the people's intent and working together on plans to do things differently. And yes, of course, I will be deceived a few times. That will happen.
And finally, this question has been staring at me all the way through our conversation, and I'd feel bad if I didn't ask it to you, Moa. So why not celebrate calmness on Træna instead of crowds?
But I thought I answered that a little bit. As I said, it's very calm, or windy and calm, or how you put it. I mean, it's never calm. It's when you some days you wake up and you go outside the door and you say like, oh, I suddenly hear my neighbors, and that's because it's wind still. And that doesn't happen so often. But I think we do celebrate the calmness, and we are very happy to have Træna as a balanced community where it is not traffic crowds, there are not people pollution. We just have this big party once a year. But the rest 360 days we celebrate the calm.
Thank you very much. Well, now we can calmly make our way out to the food. So, but first, would you please join me in thanking this distinguished and excellent panel who I thought gave us really interesting insights. And the good...
Where are our mittens?
You will be presented with mittens in a secret location just outside later on, but we were a bit worried there might be a rush. If,
we came here especially because of the...
Okay, so now we're going to go for the... it's actually designated as a coffee break rather than a lunch break, so I hope I haven't raised your expectations too much. And we'll be back at 3:30, 15:30 hours, for panel 2, which will have a much better moderator than me, and I hope you enjoy your coffee and snacks.